Okay. So today I wanted to go over the dev blog Endgame update. Now, one thing I'm gonna say is pretty consistent with the New World devs is they don't really write things in a very detailed way, which I think leaves a lot of people with the wrong impressions when they read a lot of the updates. So I've gone through this like very carefully and have reread it and read other people's opinions on it. And I think the more that I try to understand what they're trying to say here, the better I see that these changes might actually be. I was completely planned on making a video talking about how this is going to ruin the game, but I think that a lot of us just aren't really reading into it as deeply as it actually is. So I'm not going to read through this like word for word like I usually do because I believe a lot of you have already heard most of this, but I will summarize what I think that what they're saying here, what it actually means. So first of all, what they're trying to address in this update is making the end game feel a little bit more like there's more variety to it, and that you don't just have to kind of farm chests or outpost rush to be able to increase your gear score and become stronger. So their plan to improve that is by kind of changing the way Watermark works and adding a expertise and gypsum system. Now, I think they really should have stuck this little post towards the end because I think this is part of what makes a lot of us look at the entire update as a lot more negative. And this is basically where they're saying if you buy or craft gear that is, let's say, 600 gear score, starting in the new year, that 600 gear score will perform as the same item but scaled down to whatever your gear score is. Now, I think that this is a weird change. It's kind of a bad change, but I'm going to look at it in an optimistic way for one, okay? So the negative change is that it really makes buying gear seem less important, seems more pointless. So, for example, one of the most popular endgame gear sets is obviously the Void Bent gear. So, if we get a 600 gear score Void Bent chest plate, we buy it, it's super expensive. Now it operates as a 500 gear score if you're a fresh level 60. So the negatives are obviously it seems like you're not getting your money's worth, right? But one thing that they don't explain here, which I think is kind of implied, is that your 600 gear score Void Bent will perform like a 500 gear score, but as your gear score raises by playing the game with your new gear, that piece that you bought will also be improving as your gear score raises. So, for example, you get the Void Bent so that you get better luck. You're utilizing that better luck by killing endgame open world bosses. And now your gear score raised, let's say 10 gear score. So, as you leave that endgame activity that you were doing, your equipped gear just got 10 gear score better. And if you guys don't know how gear score is going to affect your items, basically the higher your gear score, the higher your actual numbers. So your attribute bonuses and then any perks that lie after it. So your 600 gear score Void Bent, the luck bonus to it will be a little bit lower. Will be performing at the luck that you would be getting at 500 gear score. But like I said, as your gear score raises, that luck and those attributes will increase again. Like I said, it's a little bit negative and it's going to hurt like when this change first drops, but I think it's actually going to be kind of interesting and probably good overall. And the reason is some of the next things that they talk about here are basically the new ways that you're going to be able to increase your gear score. So before we would increase our gear score through outpost rush and by looting higher level chests and killing kind of end game bosses. Now, the problem is for any of you guys who did this gear score grind is sometimes you could go and you could grind this stuff out for days and barely see any gear score improvements. Now, what they're doing with a gypsum is they're going to allow you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ways for you to increase your gear score. It seems like every 24 hours, a guaranteed gear score upgrade, which realistically is guaranteeing more gear score increase than we are used to right now. Additionally, we can use this gypsum to target the gear score improvements. So, for example, we're not getting a lot of jewelry drops, but we will be able to use our gypsum to focus kind of jewelry upgrades, and our upgrades where we want them can be more consistent and quicker. So ultimately, I think this 500 to 600 gear score grind that we're used to is actually going to be a bit quicker. So let's look at this. Obsidian Gypsum, defeating level 60 plus open world named bosses typically found in elite landmarks. This is already something that we're used to doing for grinding gear score. Now we will be able to get Gypsum. That'll guarantee that it actually gives us value out of it. So we can get the Gypsum and leave, or we can stay there and continue grinding the boss like we used to get up more incrementally like we're used to, basically. Now we just get an additional Gypsum that's going to guarantee some increase. Sapphire Gypsum, defeating the final bosses of the Lazarus Instrumentality and Garden of Genesis. So these are two things where, a lot of us were avoiding these endgame dungeons because we need 591 gear score to get some of the best legendaries. But now, every time we go to the Lazarus or Garden of Genesis, we can get a Sapphire Gypsum, which I believe is once every 24 hours also, but it will guarantee a gear score upgrade in whatever slot we want to focus. Ruby Gypsum, found in Outpost Rush caches. So same kind of thing. Outpost Rush will allow us to increase our gear score, but we will also gather Gypsum in that time to be able to guarantee. Emerald Gypsum, found in trade skill aptitude reward containers. Now this is something I think a lot of people are overlooking, because a lot of people who are crafting are seeing this first paragraph up here where it says that if you craft 600 gear score, it scales down, and they're saying, wow, crafting is dead. But I don't think that's the case, because like I said, crafting, instead of giving you an immediate boost, it's gonna give you a scaling piece of gear that kind of will be useful for a long period of time. So if you're 500 gear score and you buy Void Bent, sure, it's going to be 500 gear score Void Bent, but it's going to be something you're going to be using all the way up to 600 gear score. So that, plus being able to increase our gear score. So for the first time, for crafting, we're not only making better gear score stuff, but we're actually able to increase our watermark, or what we formerly knew as Watermark, which will now be considered expertise, through just trade skills. So don't overlook this. I've spent a ton of time crafting because I'm in, one of the lower population servers. It's hard to find groups. It's hard to consistently grind my Watermark. So I've been spending time crafting, and this paragraph made me feel bad. But this paragraph down here about the Gypsum coming in from the trade skill tells me that, we'll be increasing our gear score. Your gear will still be useful, and so this is just an extra bonus. Well, we're actually being less forced to do some of these things because we can increase our gear score through trade skills. Citrine Gypsum from arena caches, same thing. Amethyst Gypsum, found in breach caches. So interesting thing here, I wonder if this means that even lower level corrupted zones we can gather Gypsum and increase our gear score through there. Because for me, to go to any corruption node under level 65 was a waste of time before, but maybe now I'll be gathering Amethyst Gypsum and be increasing my gear score through even the portals that are in Everfall and lower level zones. Topaz Gypsum, found on a hostile creature's level 55 plus, but only after consuming a special attunement potion. So this is also another cool thing to overlook. So we buy the higher gear score stuff because we don't want to grind Watermark, because maybe we don't want to, or maybe because it's hard for us to find a group like it is for me. And it's hard to go to those level 60 plus zones and increase your gear score. But now, if we make these special attunement potions, we'll actually be able to increase our gear score at level 55 plus zones, which tells me that we'll be able to increase our gear score all by ourselves, solo. So yeah, it's kind of weird because, I've read a lot of comments and watched videos on how people feel about these changes, and I think they're really overlooking this and the trade skill bonus here, where us solo players, we aren't actually damned. We're actually in a position where we're going to be able to increase our Watermark solo more effectively. Problem being is that there's no Gypsum for PvP, which I think is weird. Maybe the last changes they did where they implemented increasing your Watermark through PvP, maybe those kind of still stand, and so PvPers won't be in a terrible spot, but they won't be able to take advantage of Gypsum in the same way that people who are doing any of these other things will be able to do. They mentioned in this paragraph that it should only take 30 to 60 minutes a day for people to earn enough gypsum in that category to be able to, get that guaranteed watermark increase. So basically, it seems like it would be most effective now to spend about an hour doing each of these things. And then anything else you want to do with your day, whether it's continue to farm elite chests or if it's continue crafting, all of those things should still be a good use of your time outside of doing an hour of one of these every day. Every 23 hours, we can create a new gypsum orb. So every 23 hours, we can kind of go through this daily mission grind almost feeling kind of thing. They are tuning down some of the chances to increase your gear score or your expertise, as it'll be called now, from chests and stuff like that, which I don't really like the idea of that because yeah, we were able to increase our gear score through chests and stuff like that, but it was always like a grind anyways. So I don't see why they need to compensate at all, as they said here. I don't totally agree with that. They talk about some reward improvements here. Each expedition boss will guarantee a random expertise bump. So that's good. I wonder if this is including all of the like mini expedition bosses throughout the dungeon, or if it's still just talking about the end game boss or the end dungeon boss. Fixed all chests in Lazarus Instrumentality and Garden of Genesis, so they have a chance to provide endgame expertise bumps. I don't believe them. They said they've fixed these chests about 5 times already. I don't believe them. Added item shards. Now this is a really cool thing, which I was waiting for them to put in, or was just kind of hoping they would put in, and now they are. Item shards will allow you to craft an item with a specific attribute bonus on it, while still be able to use a craft mod to guarantee a perk. And they are guaranteed to drop from expedition bosses and have a chance to drop from elite chests in expeditions and elite landmarks. So I really like this because what this is doing is you don't need to worry about RNG as much, right? You can use a craft mod that you really, really want on an item without risking having attributes that don't help you at all. So I really like this idea, and I think it's another thing that's making crafting just a little bit more useful. A lot of crafters feel like this change is going to kill crafters. This update is going to kill the crafting professions, but I don't think so. They're doing a few things in here, increasing watermark and now item shards and stuff like that, that are still going to have it be useful. And then they talk about difficulty adjustments, which, I kind of like. They're talking about overtuned HP sponges, which are always things that make the game not fun at all. So they're looking at things, and I think this is mostly, pretty good changes. They will not sell gypsum in the cash shop. Thank you. Here, and this is probably my only question, is with the addition of trade skill aptitude system, crafters will be able to earn emerald gypsum as a path to increase their expertise. But from my understanding, you're getting trade skill aptitude boosts basically by gaining experience past level 200. So does this mean that, level 200 crafters, if they want to continuously be taking advantage of this potential gear score increase, that we're going to be making a bunch of orichalcum gear just for the XP? Because I don't know, I think that'll be a little weird. I think that that might tank some of the value of some of these higher level, gear as well. Buying higher gear score weapons useless now. So one thing I want to ask you guys is the only thing that buying higher gear score armors and weapons being useless for is potentially PvP, right? Because for me, like, I wanted to get higher gear score gear just so that I can participate in some of the, higher end elite level farms without feeling like I'm useless. So there was basically an intention for my watermark to kind of go up anyways, but just making the whole ride a lot more smooth. So now if you buy higher gear score armor and weapons, and I haven't been able to feel it too much because there's not a crazy amount of people with PvP enabled on my server, but is your gear score kind of improving kind of regularly where it feels good increasing your watermark through PvP? Because if it does feel good, then buying gear score armor and weapons still isn't useless for PvP. Otherwise, I think, PvP are the only people who are going to struggle. This here kind of clarifies that you can only use an orb for a certain thing per day. So for example, gypsum bow cast a day. or 1 Gypsum Fire Staff cast a day. So even getting all 7 orbs, you can either sit on all 7 orbs and have to wait 23 hours to use the next one on the same item, or you can, they discuss here, there's 3 jewelry options, 5 armor options, and 12 weapon options. So you can kind of spread it around however you feel is most useful to you. Remember, you can only get 7 gypsum orbs a day, so that's 3 jewelry, let's say 2 weapons, 5, and then maybe 2 armor pieces a day. And you might switch that up however you want, but that would probably be how most of us will be utilizing it if we're getting the maximum of 7 orbs in a day. And at the very end, they talk about adding jewelry items to the drop tables, so players will be able to catch up both through gypsum and random expertise bumps, which is good. So yeah, hopefully, I think I did a really good job at looking at basically all of these changes very optimistically, because when I first read this, I was with all of you with feeling like this was going to ruin the game. Crafters feel useless, people who buy gear feel useless. But it's interesting because we'll all be able to use Void Bent, for example, but the effectiveness will be different from player to player. I think it's interesting, and I feel like the first week or two, a lot of people are going to be really upset, and I think a lot of people are going to quit just off of a whim, just off of I bought 600 gear score stuff, I loved using it, I loved PvPing with it. Now it's 500 today because I never grinded my gear score. But I think in actuality, allowing people to increase their gear score through a bunch of different activities regularly, daily, and guaranteeing it will actually mean that people are going to catch up to that 600 gear score a lot quicker than the grind would have been with the way that it was previously. And hopefully in a more fun way, we can actually do Lazarus straight off of level 60 and get the gypsum to be able to still make it worth it for us. But there's a lot of variety here that we're going to be able to take advantage of. So, just don't quit quite yet. Let's kind of see how it is. Let's kind of see how it feels. My prediction is it's literally going to take about maybe 2 weeks after this change goes through for the people who bought or crafted their gear to get the full effectiveness out of that gear again. So yeah, you can hate me for being optimistic, but I just think some of us were looking at this update a little bit wrong, and hopefully this gives you guys a little bit of a sigh of relief. Thank you and have a good year.